essentially the sense of self, the sense of individuality inside the body, which would be like inquiry would be where yoga heads if it keeps going through the eight limbs of yoga. So inquiry is a questioning of, from the Ramana Maharshi sense, who am I? It would be based on the idea or the theory that you are what you're looking for, essentially. And just like most yoga and Buddhism, you're not being the body and the mind. So you being essentially before the body and the mind. And in that theory, if you are what you're looking for, then what you're inquiring into is essentially what's looking for it. Yeah. So in yoga, they say Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, would be our nature, meaning like a done deal. Like you are that now, essentially. And then there's a sense of not being that, obviously. So inquiry is into what is that sense that doesn't feel like existence, consciousness, bliss right now. Yeah? Because if you are that, then what doesn't feel like that you must be misidentified as that. And what doesn't feel like that would be the body and the mind, essentially. So inquiry is into who am I? If I'm not the body and the mind, it's like a regression in a way, like a stepping back to a negation of what we take ourselves to be. When that's negated, you sit back into what you are. So the inquiry is constantly, who am I? Yeah? Who is aware of the thoughts? This is what me and Marcel were talking about last week when it came to meditation. Yeah, you sit down and meditate, and there's a sense that you're seeing thoughts. Most people stop there, not because of their own. They haven't done anything wrong, but to be honest, most literature stops there as far as what we are offered today from whatever teacher we might see. If you sit down and meditate, the mind calms down a little bit, and there's a sense that you're seeing your thoughts. So people they go, okay, I'm seeing the thoughts, I'm not the thought. But the sense of seeing the thoughts is another thought. So it's another binding. And now, to be honest, it's tighter than just living as the thoughts. If you think you're not your thoughts, you're bound to being the thinker, essentially, before the thoughts. So whatever the thoughts present to you, you're definitely going to go with those thoughts. Yeah? If you take yourself to be the thinker. Self-inquiry breaks that bondage. So I'm not the thoughts, and then you go, I'm the one seeing the thoughts. That feeling of being the seer of thoughts, you are also not that. Yeah? So it's called non-duality because there's a sense, all of this stuff pops up in two-ness. There's a thought, and then there's a sense that you're seeing the thought. Subject, and then object. The thought is an object. You are the subjectivity, or the sense of, the thought is an object, and the sense of being the seer of that thought is a subject. That puts it in a state of two-ness, yes? Two things, you are not two. So whatever pops up as two gets negated. That's why, Marcel, last week you were like, well, when we meditate, I see my thoughts. That's right, but there's a sense of you being the subject to those objective thoughts. Yeah? And that puts you in a seat of two, and non-duality is simply saying not two. So whatever pops up as two, you are not. Yeah? So there's a wall there, and there's these eyes are seeing the wall. I'm not the wall, and I'm not the eyes, essentially. The fan is on, I can hear the fan. I'm not the fan, I'm not the ears. Then the head is saying fan. Yeah, I can see the thought of a fan, so I'm not the thought, nor am I the seer of the thought, which is another thought, by the way. Everything always steps back to the sense of you, me. Yeah, everything steps back to the sense of me. So who's seeing the thought? I am. Who experiences the emotion? I do. Who has the family? I do. Who's mad? I am. Who's happy? I am. Yeah? It's all based on the sense of I. All based on the sense of I. And this life is always moving. So happy, sad, up, down, left, right, good, bad. That's just what happens in this life. And it's like what Jesus said, you are in this world, but you are not of this world. So that life moves, uh, but you are not, your true nature is not that life, essentially. Yeah. We are what is aware of that life. So self-inquiry is just looking into the I, essentially, the sense of me. Everything comes after the sense of me. Everything. Our whole life as a body is based on the sense of me. And there is a sense of me in Advaita or non-duality, they would call that the sense of individuality. There is that sense which arises, and your head has you presupposed as that, by the way. You're not doing that. The mental system already has you set up as a sense of individuality. And that sense of individuality, everything comes after that. Huh? So there's a sense of me that pops up. If my true nature is not that me, that would be very good to know. Yeah? Because everything that comes after the idea of me is based on that meanness. If I'm taking myself only to be me, the idea of a me, then I'm tied to everything that comes after that. No matter how insane the thought system will get, which is because I come from the world of alcoholism, so it gets very insane. I'm going to go with it if I'm taking myself to be it. It doesn't matter how insane it is because I'm taking it to be right because it's mine. Yeah. If the thought comes up and it's not, and the head goes, that's my thought, and I know I'm not I'm not bound to the thought, essentially. Nor am I bound to the possessions, nor am I bound to the ups and downs and the left and right. Huh? And life will present you lots of ups and downs and left and rights. That's why most people come to yoga. Yeah? Nobody comes to yoga because their life is going perfect. They usually come to yoga because something's got them uncomfortable for the most part. And the biggest bondage of that me is body. When your head says me or I, it's see the body, essentially. And then most of our lives is spent trying to maintain this body, really. We go to work so the body can live inside of a place. We try to eat right so the body doesn't hurt the body, yeah. And it kind of keeps going on. Yeah, so the inquiry is into that, it's into the sense of me. It's not into what comes after that sense. As Ramana Maharshi would say, you are onto the second and third person as soon as you start chasing other thoughts. So really, inquiry is just who is that thought arising to? Who is the image of the fan arising to? Who is the depression arising to? Who is the happiness arising to? Whose family? Whose friends? It all comes back to me. Yeah. And then the real question is, who am I? Am I that sense of me? And is there a thing inside of this body which is called a me? Or is that me just one of the 1,000 thoughts going through the pipe, essentially? So not two is saying you're not the mind and the body. The sense of me is of the mind, essentially. And you're not the mind and the body. You are what is aware of. Yeah. And that is always so. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then inquiry can go on into like, who is the thought arising to me? And then you inquire into the body, where is the me? Is the sense of me in my elbow, or is it in my knee? Is it behind my eyes or on the top of my head? Where is that sense? What is that thing? Yeah. Because everything else is based on that sense of me. Everything is based on I. Yeah? So if that's not a thing, then I seem to be working for an employer. That sense of I changes a lot. It ties itself to many different things. So it's quite inconsistent in itself when it's searched for. But the basis of it is not two. So whatever pops up as two, this is a very interesting thing. Most people feel that they are the sense of individuality, meaning, let's say J, yeah? So that sense arises, and then very quickly it splits into two, because there's a sense that J knows the body, and there's a sense that J knows the thoughts. So now J is a noticer and a body, and J is the thinker and the thoughts. So the sense of J splits into two very quickly. The basis of non-duality and duality is not two. One of the reasons I like it is because how it's just like a fact. It's just a basic fact, yeah? Not two. But the sense of you splits into two almost instantly. Sometimes you're being thought about, and sometimes you're thinking about. So who are you? Are you the body, or are you what notices the body? Are you the thoughts, or are you the thinker of the thoughts? Because both questions put you into a state of two-ness. Most people live that way, and it causes a lot of anxiety, which makes sense, really. It's just explaining it or talking about it makes you think, yeah, that is a bit odd. That is a bit anxiety-inducing, yeah? So if your thoughts are saying a bunch of, like my experience is the thoughts are saying a bunch of terrible things about me, yeah? So my thoughts are talking about me, which puts me into a place of two-ness right away. But am I the thoughts that are talking about me, or am I the feeling of being the one that the thoughts are talking about? Yeah? Now, non-duality says you're not either, so don't worry about it. But when you're caught in it, it's very overwhelming because it's very confusing. Thoughts are talking about me. I can't seem to stop those thoughts, and I'm tied to them by being the me that they're talking about. Yeah? That's all two-ness. It's all two, two, two. So the best way, in my experience, is to say, who are those thoughts arising to? Me. That's where it starts. Me. Who am I? What is the me? Yeah. Yeah. Meditation can be like a new binding in a way. So when you meditate, depending on the method that you're doing, which in contemporary spirituality has gotten extremely messy and extremely convoluted in many ways, because now meditation is used as like a thought process or like a way to improve becoming a CEO or some shit. I don't know what it's become, but I don't really read this stuff, but I see it a lot. Meditation is just a way to settle the thinking, yeah, over time and unify the experience of the body and the mind. Essentially, that would be called samatha in Vipassana, or like in Thailand, let's say. Beyond that, you're really just setting yourself up for inquiry. Yeah, so there's a bunch of thoughts going on, let's say. People want out of those thoughts. Okay, so Advaita or not two is essentially saying you're not the thoughts, you've never been the thoughts. So inquire into who is the one who wants to get out of those thoughts. Because when you sit down to meditate, there's no problem with meditation, it's very helpful, but when it becomes a binding is when people feel like they're going to get out of the thoughts as the thinker, which they're not going to do because self cannot get out of self. So when you sit down and meditate, there's a sense that you're sitting down and meditating and that the thoughts are going to calm, yeah? That makes sense so far? So this inquiry is about who is the one who's sitting down to meditate. Who is the one who wants out? Because what wants out of discomfort is not getting out because it's of the inness. Huh? When you investigate into self-inquiry, yeah, there is no thing inside the body which is a me. The me is a sense of individuality. It's like Paul Hederman would say, there's no noun, there's just a bunch of action going on here. But there's no noun inside of this thing. Yeah, there's no solid thing, which is the doer. That's why in Advaita they say there is no doer, there's just a bunch of doing happening, essentially. So when you sit down to meditate, the point of meditation is to settle the thinking mind so that you can see there is no thinker, essentially. It's like in Zen, they would say, it's just the practice of letting go of your thoughts, meaning a thought comes up, you don't grab it. A thought comes up, you don't grab it. Yeah? That would be like the basis of meditation in a lot of Zen. Because it's all based on the idea that you are already what you're looking for. And you're not those thoughts. And you're not the sense of being the thinker of those thoughts. But the thing is, meditation becomes a new addiction for a lot of people because they feel like they're going to get out of it as it. And that's not how it works. Because self, we know this is an AA saying, but self, the sense of individuality, cannot get out of that sense of individuality. It's got a pretty low ceiling, and that ceiling is called duality, yeah? Self is not getting out of self. They know that in AA because in AA, that's usually the main movement. The addict goes into the program and I'm going to become a better addict. No, you're not. The head is going to stay that way for a while. You're going to lose faith in that mental system and put it into God in that program. And then the life is going to get better. So when it comes to meditation, yeah, the meditation method, whatever that be, is simply to settle the thinking so that the thinking can then be inquired into. Who is the one who's thinking? Who is the one who wants to get out of thinking? Who is the one who's in discomfort? It always comes back to me. Always. This whole life only exists because of the sense of me. None of this room has any meaning until my head says wall, curtain, fan, hot water thing, yoga mat, cell phone, piece of paper. Yeah? Aside from the meaning that my head is giving life, it has no meaning, meaning it's just happening like a river flowing. Yeah? That's like life happening. And then my head is going meaning, 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 meaning. It's giving meaning to everything based on the past. Based on the past. That's why they say you can only see the past. Huh? So your head is going to do that, but you are not the head that's doing that. So when your head gives meaning to certain things, like meditation is really useful and I have to do meditation, you're bound to that meaning if you're living only as the sense of me. Because the head is giving meaning to the world, and if we're tied to me, we are giving the head all of its meaning. So it doesn't matter what it says, I'm going to go with it. Yeah? So meditation really is to settle the thinking mind and to settle somebody down, unify the body and the mind, and then inquire into that body and mind. Aside from that, it can be misused in a lot of ways. A lot of ways. And when I study with Judith Blackstone, who's like an embodiment, non-duality person, somebody asked, can you talk about meditation and therapy? And she said, not in this session because I have way too much shit to say, essentially. Because meditation can become a new binding. It can also induce way more anxiety. And it's not always super useful. People feel they're going to meditate the body into a not body. And that will never work.